The discussion will cover practical and actionable insights on how do you strategize to implement and attract, retain your top talent, including building a strong employer brand, creating a positive workplace culture, offering competitive compensation and benefits, and investing in employee development. The session will also address challenges faced by SMEs in attracting and retaining talent and provide insights and solutions to overcome them. Attendees will gain valuable insights and practical tips to build a strong workforce and achieve business growth. I would like to invite Ruchee Anand, Senior Director, Talent, Learning and Engagement Solutions at LinkedIn, to set the context for this discussion and moderate this discussion. As panelist, I would like to invite Somesh Jauhari, Head of Bajaj Allianz Technology, India, and Vijay Kumar, Co-founder and CEO, InApp.
All right. Your jobs are changing even when you're not changing your jobs. And the reason I say that is because of a big skills shift. But before I get to that, I just wanted to say, Vijay and Somesh, don't you think when I'm saying this, that our jobs are changing, our job today as moderator and panelists is also different, because we have the tough task of bringing people back from lunch and keeping you all engaged. Can we just have a little bit of energy in the room, please? Yay, yes. I hope you all have had like a good lunch and are as excited as I am to have this conversation and for the next 30 minutes dive deeper into a lot of things that are top of mind for a lot of leaders like you. And this morning, Anand's session as well, when he had asked for how many of you in the room talent is a concern or is a challenge, I think almost 60% of the room had raised their hands. So coming back to what I started with, your job is changing even when you're not changing your job. As per LinkedIn's Skill Evolution report, what we see globally is that skill sets for jobs have changed 25% since 2015 and are slated to change by 41% by 2025, which is just around the corner. And coming closer home, the same data for India actually says that skills in India have changed 29%, almost 30%, just between 2015 and now. And this number will go almost up to 50% by 2025. Now, this makes me anxious, not just as a business leader, but also as a parent to a teenager. When you think about what's in store and how the next few years looking like. In fact, I must share this. I had joined a webinar, an education careers webinar for my son. And what struck me that the educator on the call asked a question to all parents. Are you preparing your children for one big career of their life, or are you preparing them for a lifetime of careers? And the reason I bring this up is because this is where we are heading. We have seen in the last 2.5, 3 years, we have seen so much of change. From the great resignation or great reshuffle, we are actually seeing what I would like to also call, like a lot of people call it, the great mismatch. Why do I say the great mismatch? Because we are seeing that when organizations are still looking for asking people come back to return to office, the hunger for remote work is still very much there when you look at talent. And again, that's data throws some light on that. So what we're also seeing on the platform across the world, we've seen that the share of remote applications is more than double than the number of job postings. So as an example, in US, 20% of the jobs are for remote, but applications are over 50%. India, it's 10% jobs are remote, more than 21% applications are for remote. So what this is saying, and as per our latest future of recruiting report, it shows that apart from compensation and benefits, the top 3 factors that candidates look for when they're applying to jobs is career advancement, flexibility, and work-life balance. So the point I'm trying to make here is that there is definitely some kind of disconnect in terms of what employers and employees are looking for. And acquiring, retaining, developing skills and talent is the #1 priority that we see is, that is on top of mind for all CXOs, for all leaders, for all founders. And another stat, 8.5 trillion US dollars and of unrealized revenue and 85 million workers by 2030 is the shortfall which will be resulted because of skill shortages. So all this that I have just shared with you is really about the time that we are in, which is so much of evolving macro conditions, changing expectations by talent. And what this moment really requires is agility. And when we say agility for individuals, agility means career growth and relevance. And for organizations, agility equals the ability to survive and thrive through these economic headwinds. So to build a resilient and an adaptable future, leaders are recognizing the need for new and people-centric playbooks. And that's the reason why I have the pleasure today to take a few leaves out of those playbooks. I have Vijay and Somesh with me, who will be diving deeper to share with us how they, in their experience, have really focused on attracting and retaining talent, and how are they thriving, ensuring that their talent is thriving as well as their organizations are. So I know that we've just done a quick intro, but I do want to do an intro in my style. So Somesh is, as you all know, the COO, CPO, and head of branch at Allianz Technology. One thing that's not on your LinkedIn profile, Somesh, one fun fact.
I hope I'm audible. Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think my LinkedIn profile is already shared. So one or two things that I would like to add is that I'm a nuclear physics graduate, but leading an IT company right now.
Nuclear physicist, come on.
Yeah. So I think you
Clap.
spoke about
Nice.
mismatch. You spoke about mismatch, and here is an example. But a fun fact is that my de-stress mantra is to sing over the weekend.
Amazing.
Though it is stressful for my neighbors and my wife. So.
That's great, thank you. And we have Vijay with us, the co-founder and CEO of InApp. And Vijay has so many skills outside of what he does. I'm sure that he may have a list of fun facts that are not on LinkedIn, but maybe we can start with one, Vijay.
Thanks, Ruchee. I'm just going to keep it very light. LinkedIn is typically, the place where you really put up all your strengths and those things that will work well for you. That's what you really put up in LinkedIn. But there are some things you can't put up in LinkedIn, and one of those, believe it or not, is a funny shape of my nose. And the reason I say it is because I've actually leveraged it. For my MBA entrance examination, there was a psychologist who spoke about my nose, and he said, "You have a funny nose." And I would much rather him talk about my nose, which I know I can defend reasonably, than kind of get deep into a subject of which I was very shallow. That's just one instance, but there have been more. Another quick instance is where in college, it was a time when ragging was quite common. And as a junior, you just get into college. There was a rumor that was floated that, see this guy's nose and it goes flat, there's no cartilage. And the reason is because I had deviated nasal septum. But the story went that it is because this guy was in the boxing finals and he got bashed up at the finals of a national boxing competition. When the seniors come to you and ask you, is it true? I don't dare say it is true, because then if I get caught, I get kicked. I don't want to say no because I get dragged. So I would just sigh and say, oh well.
Amazing. So, I'm sure all these skills are tied into a lot of the good things they're doing at work, and I'll tell you, we'll come to that for sure. So anyways, let's get started with our first question, and I wanted to talk about, the framing that I did initially is really breaking it up into 3 problems: the hiring problem, the retention problem, and the skills gap problem. Okay, so as leaders of tech companies, can you share your experience with changing skill needs as well as gaps that you're seeing in the tech sector? So Vijay, do you want to go first?
Ruchee, I'm going to come through this in a slightly different way. And it's a given, no doubt, that there is a very rapidly changing scenario of what the job is going to look like going ahead. That is being addressed largely by NASSCOM and players like NASSCOM, like LinkedIn, which is really looking at what is the future, where does the future need to go, and what do we need to do appropriately for that. For example, you're the Future Skills program that NASSCOM does precisely for that, and you do a whole lot of programs as well. But as an SME, as a small company, and not as part of the industry, I am on the here and now, and my recruiting needs are what I need now, and not really what is it going to be 3 years, 5 years down the line. And we'll probably talk a little bit about that if time permits. But again, on your point, I really believe that we have no control of the changing scenario of what it's going to be like 3 years, 5 years, and perhaps even compromised visibility. It's not a complete full picture. When a person joins an engineering college, it is not exactly what you learn, but you actually kind of learn to learn. You learn certain habits, you learn certain traits. It is therefore important that what we do now, we do it well, and that done will stand itself in good stead in time to come, even when the role changes. My top of my thought. Thank you.
Yeah, I will possibly add, I think the problem is something that it's not a future problem, it's something that we are already experiencing. If you look at a typical profile of a talent, let's say a developer, it's no longer one primary skill, it's not a strong Java developer. So the expectation as we go more agile into cloud, into DevOps is not just a depth but a breadth of skill. So I think that's where I think, and you can't just keep recruiting multiple talents. I think with the cost pressures that everyone is going through. So I think that investment in driving, I would call T-shaped developers, where you have certain primary skills which are your depth, and also a broad range of secondary skills, and also having a robust framework in the organization that kind of, in an inclusive way, uses this as a means to address this problem. So that's how we have been addressing this in Allianz.
So what I'm hearing from both of you is, it comes back to, like you said, learning to learn, as well as having some of the traits and I would say a growth mindset or learner's mindset. And I think Maulik said that in the morning as well in his opening, that that is very key to be able to kind of make sure we are hiring that kind of talent. But let me just go a little deeper on this one to even understand, as leaders, how do you advise or work with your, let's say, talent acquisition team to be able to identify what specific skills? So if we were to give a practitioner's guide to the audience, like what would be the few things that you'd want, and do you really hire only basis past experience, or do you use a skills first approach? And a skills first approach is not necessarily looking at the degree or the past job description, or I would say job title, but it's more about what is the skills that they bring to the table. So any insights on that?
I think it's a combination of both. I think it's important, one, to understand what is the motivation of the individual. I mean, is it technology? Is it just pure compensation, etc.? So, and how do I leverage the strengths that I bring in? So I think, and also very important, that is the talent trainable. I think it's important to understand in terms of the learning agility as we talk. So for us, we have leveraged to play on the strengths that we as an organization bring, so that it is a lever to attract talents. And if those strengths are aligned to the motivations of the individuals, I think that's a good combination in terms of making sure that we are attracting the right talents. There would be skill gaps, and those are the specific areas where we purely look at going out for specific skills, which can then be built internally further. So.
Yeah, Vijay, go ahead.
No, I think it's pretty much what Somesh said, and I think completely agree. So we do, of course, have a exercise that we do, wherein we look at the kind of talent pipeline requirement based on what we are seeing in the marketplace, and then how do we kind of plan for it and execute on it. Where we, of course, realize that we have what we get, and therefore exactly what was said, which is that we might have to make provision for suitably kind of providing for training, etc., particularly if it's lower level kind of recruitment at the early stage. If it is a senior stage, then the whole challenge, which I'm sure we'll talk about, how do you attract people who are probably already there, and how do you bring them in, which is again, certainly a big challenge. I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little bit as well.
Yeah, okay, so let's get into that. Not just senior, but I'll just still stick to the attracting talent piece. And let's just talk about not just attracting talent for a, let's say, newer organization or for SMEs, right? How do you also attract talent when you're in smaller cities or in, you're present in different cities and towns? How do you kind of drive that motivation? How do you make sure that the value proposition of the organization and the vision is clearly communicated? And also, if you could also on that touch a little on Gen Z, because Gen Z makes a large part of the workforce already. So your thoughts on that?
So let me step back a little, because I think what I would like to talk about will really encompass all that you talked about, which is the Gen Z and everything else. And I think this is fundamental, and I would really want to take 2-3 minutes talking about this. I think what is most important is that each organization, and every organization is different, you're a small organization, mid-sized, large-sized, the flavors are different. But for each organization, it's extremely critical to identify and very clearly understand what is your EVP, what is your employee value proposition. This is not something that is some high-funda big talk, but I think it is something which is necessary to kind of articulate and be able to do. I would broadly categorize the EVP in 4 different buckets. The first of them is what is the material offering. The material offering refers to your salaries, your compensation, including the flexibility, which is today what most people really ask about. But all that really goes into the bucket of material offerings. The second, which Ruchee has been talking about for most part, and I really see where she is coming from, given that she's also got the background of LinkedIn, and of course it's extremely relevant, is about growth and development. That really forms the second bucket. What's the kind of career advancement opportunities that I might get being here? How do I make myself more valuable in the marketplace, etc.? So that really becomes the second bucket. The third bucket, a very important one, is about community. It's about the environment where we collaborate. It's about being in a larger group, and the dynamics of that, which all of us know very well, but that's again very important. And the fourth is about meaning and purpose, which is about what is the aspirational purpose of your very existence as a company, and as an employee, how do I align with it? So on these 4 buckets, none of them in isolation will probably do the trick for you. It is therefore really a combination of how you work across all these 4 buckets, and of course, some might be more relevant and pertinent at different points in time than some others. But ignore one would really become suicidal. So I'll repeat very quickly. The first is about the here and now, which is the material offerings. Very often we have people come in, and the easy way that an HR person will come and talk to you is saying that, we have a problem, our salary is out of sync. Sure enough, if the salary is out of sync, you might need to fix it. But don't let the HR person go away with just that, because that is not the conversation you want. You want to have a conversation on the entire EVP. This is one part of it. Flexibility is another. We'll probably talk about that, because that's what's coming up most. The second, growth, my personal development. The third is my ability to play in the community. And the fourth is really about the purpose and the meaning of my existence in the organization. Coming to the Gen Z, if I can just very quickly talk about that, because it's very pertinent, because even the case of Gen Z, you will really need to look at it in the context of this contours that I talked about, and how do the Gen Z differ, and what do we need to do in order to accommodate for them. For example, the Gen Zs are people who are digital native. They were born in this environment. We were not. So it comes naturally for them to be able to get information as and when they please. The amount of frustration that they go through, the kind of attention span that they have is typically much less. We would need to see how do we accommodate for that in our environment. For example, today we have a culture where information is need to know, need-to-know basis, we might need to change that to information being open access. Even if it be information that is not something that you want to talk about, for example, I didn't meet my target, but put it out there because the Gen Z wants to know it. So there are different elements of the character of the Gen Z which we must accommodate in these 4 buckets that I talked about, the EVP.
Well
I
said.
completely agree with whatever Vijay has said. I'll just take a couple of examples, real examples now that we are based out of Trivandrum and also Pune. So I go back to understanding the strengths of these locations. I think each location has its own strengths, and for us it has worked really, really well in terms of how we complement the strengths of both this location. And then it ties up with the motivation of the person who wants to join us. So we try and then use our analytics in terms of historical data, where we know that Trivandrum as a location, close to 60 to 70% of the people who join us are those where the motivation is to come back to the home state or to the hometowns, stability, etc. But in Pune, in a vibrant market like here, it is to work on cutting edge technologies. And then we use our insights as to why people are not joining us basis the rejection ratio. So we speak to the people who don't join us and try to understand the motivation. And often we find that they possibly might not know the brand or what do we do. So for that, we have introduced certain new measures. For example, we have pre-joiner connects, so where they speak to the leadership and where the leadership explains to them the EVP, right? I mean, what are the technologies that we work on? Often they, for example, in the introduction, it was introduced as Bajaj Allianz, because Allianz is known in India more from a Bajaj, but we are a technology organization working on cutting edge technologies like blockchain, AI, and so on. So getting that exposure, especially for Gen Zs, they also want to know what more are you doing? And I think that connects straight to the leadership on a regular basis, even before they join. Also gives them the insight in terms of, okay, it's not just technology, there is a culture, they have a focus on sustainability, those things that really engages and drives the Gen Zs. I mean, what are you doing beyond just deliveries and technology? You know, so.
No, love that. I think both the points, especially what you also just said, Somesh, on even understanding what are the nuances of these 2 different cities in which they are operating, and what is it that the talent wants in Pune versus Trivandrum, and leveraging a lot of data and insights to actually understand what are the patterns and then almost like craft your narrative to suit that talent pool. And even, what you said, Vijay, I think you've kind of validated a lot of the LinkedIn data. Just on Gen Z as well, in fact, there is our research is showing that Gen Zs will reward employers who value development and diversity. So even aspects of community and even aspects of when you speak about community and sense of belonging, as well as how inclusive is the workforce, I think that's very, very important for talent out there. So with that, let's kind of move into
Ruchee, can I just add a point?
Please
if you
go
may?
ahead.
So in addition to what Somesh said, which is all absolutely correct, is that when we are trying to attract talent, what we do is that we initially, now with COVID, we started looking beyond, but we're working in a tier 2, tier 3 city where we try to attract talent there. What we do is we really kind of emphasize the EVP that we talk about. Unlike what was mentioned, what we do is there are fixed colleges that we go to every time where we build the brand so it's well known. And these are the colleges which are the best there that we get. It is the employees who actually go and talk about the company. And we actually had a survey done where about 3 years before, I was astonished that there were many who joined our company. We have about 500 people. And at one point, there used to be an aspiration of joining the LinkedIns, the Allianz, and the large companies that were there. And there were many in the room who actually kind of had offers from the real large ones. They chose to join this company with the 500. And we were curious, we asked why. The main reason that was stated is this. We have our seniors working in the company here, and they said, this is the place to be, with reasons whatever. Which really means that if you want to be in that position, you have to live, you have to walk the talk. You have to have, there's nothing you can do by gimmickry. But that said, there's also the need to communicate. For example, what do people look at when they join? They look at Glassdoor. They look at LinkedIn. In LinkedIn, they will look at aspects such as, you would know better, but they will look at aspects such as, what is the average tenure of a person in the company? What is the kind of hiring that has happened in the company to show the growth? In the last 6 months, how many people are hired? What's the quantum of senior level hiring that's happened in the last 6 months that also indicates growth? So there's a lot of things that they look at, which again should be things which are in place in order to be able to attract.
Oh, absolutely. In fact, that's exactly what we talk about, right? How are we running organizations with a more value-based system, as well as how is, when we talk about employer brand, there's also talent brand. And the difference in the two is, employer brand is which we can put up on our corporate websites as well as on LinkedIn to say this is what we stand for. But when your own talent talks about how is the culture, what are the kind of leaders they're working with, and leaders, people managers play such a significant role in shaping the culture of the organization. I think that makes a huge difference, and that's a great example. Thanks for sharing in terms of how, you know, career starters who are coming into your organization are actually going back by, no, this, I know that my seniors have said they're working with great managers. I think that is really the key. So it also goes back to how we investing in our people managers, because as CXOs, as founders, as CEOs, you may have a clear vision of the kind of culture you want to incorporate in the organization, of what are the policies. But for the person on the ground, it's their manager that makes a difference. So is that layer really doing their bit to be able to build that culture of being inclusive as well as creating that sense of belonging and community? Great, so let's kind of just, I know we just have about 5 minutes, so quickly I just want to touch upon specifically on retention of talent, and we're talking a lot about even, we spoke about skills, we spoke about investing in people, so it goes back to the point of internal mobility, which is where we're talking about we hire people, and people, the 3 things I said which are important for talent today is that what's my career advancement opportunity? And again, I'll quote another data point, which is interesting, again, linking to the mismatch, that C-suite says internal mobility is a top priority, but employees aren't seeing it. And that's data saying. What again, another workplace learning report tells us that first a survey was conducted that C-suite said that yes, keeping employees motivated and engaged with internal mobility is our priority. But the workplace learning report that we launched tells a different story. It says that only 14% of employees say that their organization has helped them build a career development plan. And only 15% say that their company has encouraged them to move into a new role. So how do you really encourage and build internal mobility? And Vijay, because I remember you spoke about how your structures were defining your projects were defining your structures. Why don't you share that example, and then Somesh, you can please feel free to add.
I would love to. There's something we did 3 years back, and there's something which we found very, very effective, very useful. I'm glad we did it. We did this about 6 months before COVID struck. Here's a problem. The problem is that today I'm reporting to Somesh, who's my manager, and I'm with him on a project. As a small company, we might keep changing projects time and again. So today I'm reporting to Somesh. Then I move my project, I report to somebody else, and I report to a third person. Come by appraisal, there are 3 different people I've worked with. And sham is a bad word, but the appraisal process is not a very qualified manner, because you really have people who are not really qualified to judge, who are sitting and completing my form. So we decided, let's move from this. And for some other reasons, we decided to do what's called a reporting structure, reporting officer structure. Completely devoid of the work. It is only a people structure. A complete hierarchy that was built on a people structure, where you would have a hierarchy where I report to Somesh. Somesh is my reporting officer. What is he responsible for? Not my project, not my work. He's responsible for me. He is responsible for my career development. He's responsible to fix any problems I might have. He's responsible for my entire presence in the company. Anything I might need, he is responsible for it. We started investing hugely in the reporting officers, making them a very empowered group. And we said, anything that you speak of on behalf of the company, we'll honor, feel free. Today, I hear a lot of people talking about the reporting officers, which is, to me, a testimony of the fact that it's working. And I strongly believe that the fact that we have people who are now taking strong ownership, and we invest hugely to make that happen, That is helping the company big time, particularly in the period of COVID, where people are very disconnected. We talked about community. How do you build community in remote situations? You at least had one person who was looking after 5 people, and they were constantly in connect because I cared for him. And that structure, I think, just worked enormously well. And I will seriously kind of put it to your consideration. I think for us, it worked wonders.
Amazing, and that really means owning. There's someone who's owning that. Somesh, you have been yourself an example of someone who's grown through the ranks over the years within your organization. So tell us more in terms of how do you focus on retaining talent?
I see it from 2 angles. One is how much is the organization focusing on with the right framework and policies and governance of internal mobility. And secondly is in terms of the psychological safety that we have to give to our employees. Because moving from someone's comfort zone is often difficult. And personally, I have started with Allianz as a developer and moved different. And there came a stage where I had to move out of my comfort zone. But I had the psychological safety in the form of a people resource manager saying that, okay, your failure is my failure, but give it a try. And that, so I've played procurement, HR, CEO now. And now we are trying to build that message, give that message to the people that please move out of your comfort zone. Otherwise, it's important to stay relevant in today's market. Yeah? And it goes back to the T-shape thing. So while we have the framework, it's important that it's not just the training, but there are opportunities given to people. And also, I mean, avoid ring fencing, because that's a usual trap we fall into, where managers don't let people move to other teams because they're insecure. So I think this whole concept of psychological safety needs to be driven through the managers as well as to the people as well. So.
Amazing, very well said, Somesh. Thank you. Time's up. I just want to say what stayed with me really about relevance, always learning, having that mindset, as well as that investment from the part of the organization and people managers to really own your team's career and growth is really a key to success. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. I want to be conscious of time, and I would wrap up. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening in and being engaged. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. It was indeed a very insightful conversation. And thank you for being so conscious of time, Ruchee. Really appreciate that. Here's a small token of appreciation from our end.